I'd like to welcome everybody to today's episode, shall we speak? It's almost like an adventure every week of our Gems from the Wisdom Traditions conversation circle. This year, we are indeed using that theme of carving our statue, of self-crafting to guide us through the year. And so this week's theme of crafting our speech is a portion of that entire self-crafting that we have the chance to do. I know for myself, when I go through my review at the end of a day, it is often my words, absolutely as much, if not more than my actions, that I'm either giving myself a little bit of counseling advice about those words, or else a little congratulations. It could go either way, but it's very often my words that I'm really paying attention to when I'm looking at how am I actually crafting my life. And so this week's theme, and in particular, the people who are going to present this theme is something that I feel has very strong daily relevance to all of us. So I want to begin by inviting David Sanders to introduce us to our main speaker for today, whose name is Myrtle Wong. David, could you take it away from here? David Sanders.
Hi, everyone. I also, I'm in a car with my friend John, who is another therapist. And so both John and Myrtle, who will be giving our topic today, make a living out of their words, speaking in ways to bring healing and ending suffering for individuals. One hopes. Yeah. And so when this topic came up of crafting your speech, my friend Myrtle came to mind as the perfect person, as her knowledge and background in Buddhism as well as psychology seemed like the perfect candidate for this. Her and I last year took a course together called Say What You Mean, and she'll be making reference to that. Myrtle and I met when we were both members of the Honolulu Club, and she would come to my yoga classes. And after class, we would often meet and just have amazing, dazzling, life-opening conversations. And so without further ado, my friend Myrtle.
Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to meet you all. And thank you, Renee. Thank you, David. Renee, you put things in perspective. And David, you're very kind. We've had good times together. Anyway, before I start this presentation about crafting your speech, I kind of want to know a little bit how much background everybody has. So the first question to all of you, if you could raise your hand and let me know, how many of you are familiar with Thich Nhat Hanh and his teachings? Can you raise your hand? 1, 2, 3. Okay, some of you are not. 4. Okay. How many of you are familiar with Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg, Compassionate Listening? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Oh, Renee, you do too. Okay, thank you. See, I wasn't sure, so it seems to be about half and half, that half of you are familiar with this and the other half are not. The third idea was of somatic experiencing, and there is Peter Levine is a person who coined this, and the whole notion of it is that the mind and body are connected. One influences the other. They are not separate. There's no duality, but it's one. And how many are you familiar with somatic experiencing? Can you? 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's go on. The objective of this presentation is I would like to present some ideas, and the outline is based upon Sofer's work, which is called Say What You Mean. And in his work, he included the Buddhist ideas of Thich Nhat Hanh, because he also was a follower, and so am I. I have followed Thich Nhat Hanh for 30 years, and he has walked me through life through many, many trials and tribulations. So I'm forever grateful for Thich Nhat Hanh. And from that perspective, which is a spiritual perspective, Sofer introduces the secular perspective, which is that of nonviolent communication by Rosenberg and Levine, who is a psychologist. So based upon these perspectives, I would like to, this is the objective of this presentation, that I would like to answer the 4 questions. One is, why are we, how does the Buddhist perspective and the secular psychological perspective influence your how you craft your speech? The second question is, what are our beliefs in terms of the thoughts, feelings, needs based upon those 2 perspectives, the Buddhist and this, which is I consider a spiritual perspective versus the secular. And the third objective is I'd like to introduce you to a method of how to actually craft your speech. So this is the how question. And there are 3 main ideas which came from Sofer's book. And he used these perspectives. The first one is to lead with presence. The second is to come with care and curiosity. And the third was to focus in on what matters. And the last objective is I would like you all to be a participant in this and to share from what I share with you. I'd like feedback from you, okay? And how, in other words, how to generalize these perspectives. Okay, so the question first is, why the Buddhist perspective in crafting your speech? And, you know, Thich Nhat Hanh has his 5 mindfulness trainings, and he has one on right speech. And he says here, because if you are committed, knowing that words can create happiness or suffering, I am committed to speaking truthfully, using words that inspire confidence, joy, and hope. When anger is manifesting in me, I am determined not to speak. I will practice mindful breathing and walking in order to recognize and look deeply into my anger. This is very important. This sets our goals of why we're even doing this. And in the hopes that we have the same goal, that we would like to have right understanding and true love. We would like to heal and transform ourselves and the world and those around us. So this is from Thich Nhat Hanh's, a Buddhist perspective. This is the reason we do it, right? And then from the scientific psychological perspective, and I will quote Rosenberg, he says here, to connect and communicate with more clarity and compassion so that we can be in harmony with our values and open hearts to see everyone's humanity. And, you know, he did a lot of work in war zones, like connecting people that were enemies. And Levine, he comes out with the idea that the mind and body are connected. So that's why he's important, because it is not just up here in our mind, but it's our mind and our whole body working together. So he brings forth that idea. So the second objective is, after we know why we're even using Buddhism and these ideas, is what are their beliefs? So let's go back to the Buddhist belief of Thich Nhat Hanh. And specifically, I'm going to address their beliefs in what our thoughts, feelings, and needs are. And from the Buddhist perspective, thoughts are just mental formations. They're not necessarily reality. Just because we think something, we think is correct, but really we've just conjured up thoughts in our mind, and that may not truly be reality. And according to the Buddhist perspectives, we're more than just our emotions. We're more than just our feelings. And he says, Yeah, we are more than emotions. And often we think we are our emotions, that is only what defines us. And the Buddhist perspective is because of our needs, we suffer. We suffer because we attach to these needs. We think we have to have them. And if we don't have them, we're very unhappy. We get stressed because we're thinking we're not going to get our needs, or if we get them, that we're going to lose them. So that's a Buddhist perspective about feelings and emotions and needs. Then let's go to the secular perspective and a psychological perspective. And this perspective about thoughts, and I come from, my background is psychology, and I've been in the mental health field for about 30 years, that I often use the cognitive triad when I work with clients. And we always come out with the idea that thoughts can be changed. They're created by us, which is similar to the Buddhist perspective. And if we change our thoughts, we can change our feelings. Now there's lots of research about feelings in the psychological world. Which comes first, the feeling, the thought, or the behavior? But feelings can also be changed. Thoughts can be changed. And the thing about needs of the unconscious mind, they both show up. Actually, Thich Nhat Hanh also talks about store of consciousness. In the very first retreat I ever saw him at in Plum Village, he talks about, it was about neuroscience. He was talking about that there is this thing called your store of consciousness. So he's talking about consciousness, and these seeds are sown from the time you're very young. So does he talks about it, and science, psychology, we talk about too, about consciousness and unconsciousness. My third objective now is then how do you do it? How do you craft your speech? And I am doing this based upon Sofer's book, and he includes all these philosophies. So, because the first thing is to lead with presence. When this event occurred, or if anything happens to you similar to this, the first thing you need to do is lead with presence. What does presence mean? You know, I think of Thich Nhat Hanh, one of his meditations is still water. Still water means you cannot reflect reality if you're in turmoil. You cannot see reality if you're angry and if you're all upset. And if your heart is beating, your physiology, there comes your body. You can actually measure your physical state of being. So to come with presence, that means before you even open your mouth, you have to calm yourself. You have to be present to the present moment. You have to be still water. And to understand that person, the word understand means to stand under. So I have to stand under my brother. I have to be present. I have to be calm. I have to be mindful, because mindfulness is what heals. I have to be empathetic and not reactive. So that's what leading with presence is. So before I even say a word, I must be present with me, and I must be present with him. So look at that list. When my brother made all those comments, the list, the first column is what he was thinking. The second column is what was he feeling. The third column, what did he need? So, you know, there's no one right answer. It could be multiple answers. So you must, in this first process, know when to open your mouth or keep your mouth quiet. Your first lesson is just to listen and be present. Your first lesson is to try to understand what that person's feeling, thinking, and needs are. Okay. The second step is to come with curiosity and care. What does curiosity and care mean? It's a state of being aware of what is our habitual pattern. You know, as Thich Nhat Hanh talks about seeds of unconsciousness, we all have habitual patterns, and they're so embedded in our unconscious. We think we're conscious. In fact, some psychological research shows that 90% of our behavior is unconscious. We think we're being conscious when we behave, but no, we're on automatic. Okay, so in the second one, try to be aware of your habits. You know, it's your habits to like start blaming somebody? Is your habits to start criticizing? Is your habits to be defensive? So kind of have to do a self-examination here. All right. And so instead of coming with judgment, that's the opposite. You're coming with curiosity and care. At this point, you should be able to do this. You should be able to do two things. One, you should say, you think about this other speaker because you feel and you need something. What is his need? Okay. At this point, you should also say about yourself, I want, I feel, I have to be in touch. If I am angry right now, it's not a time to talk. I have to feel calm. I have to feel that if I'm angry, it's not a good time to talk. I have to know what I want, what I need, and all of those are different. A want and a need is different. And you know, there's debate about needs because needs are supposed to be things you cannot live without. And I remember going to Plum Village and, you know, they talk about attachment. And I came from a psychological point of view where attachment is important. You need to have healthy attachment when you're growing up as a child, or you'd be an unhealthy child. Well, so I think there is some attachment that's important to your development. So anyway, be aware of your habits, be aware of where you are, be aware of how you feel. So at this point, you will not only be able to reflect, the word is reflect, the other person, but you'll be able also to know where you're at. Okay. And when you know if you're ready to talk, then you come out with curiosity and care. The common goal is, I care about our relationship. The curiosity can be a what question. We avoid the why question. The why question puts people on a defensive mode. At this point, it's a what question. What I wonder, is there something that I missed and I don't understand? Can you help me? Okay, that's the curiosity part. You want perhaps more information because you don't understand something. And you're curious about it. You're not coming there to blame them. It's only because you want to clarify things. And you show that you care for the other person. And you show empathy for the other person. The third step is focus in on what matters. And what matters, what drives us, is what we think we need. Therein, you can pull that other list that I have there for you. There's a list of needs. And they're on various levels. There's needs based on plain subsistence. You know, it's just your shelter, your food. There's needs for security. Yeah, it's hard to feel comfortable when somebody's attacking you and breaking down your door. There's need for freedom. What is truly freedom? Is that really necessary? There's need for leisure. Is it necessary to have leisure? Is that a cultural thing? And that's so interesting because Debbie, you brought out that book by DeMello. And DeMello just throws out a lot of things that we think are needs in life. He says, no, they're not needs. So there's some debate about what is a need. There's need for connection. And I think that's attachment to other people, because I don't think young children can grow up healthy without that need, without a secure attachment. And most of us don't really have secure attachments. We all have little traumas in our lives, but a few people do have very good upbringings. Not good, bad. It just is. There's no judgment about it. And there's a need for meaning. And some people, it's not important to them. For some of us, it is important. So you have to understand yourself. What are your needs in life? So the third step is to focus in the needs and what really matters. And at this point, this is when you both have a mutual need. And that's the bottom line of how you can work together. A mutual need is what I care. I am trying to help you with meeting your needs. One added step on the third, besides the need, is the question how. And how is a request. And a lot of this language here is based on nonviolent communication. So a request is, how can I be of help? A request can be very specific. So a request usually is not just one request, because if you come with one request, you get into a power struggle. And so you usually will come with a couple options, and of course, you may have other ideas of a request is a strategy. So here's the difference. Is that what you think, which may or may not be real, what you feel, your emotions, which are passing, but they sure do guide your behavior. What you need, are you aware of what your need is? What you need and what you want and your strategy are actually all very different. I need to have shelter. I need to be heard. I want you to let me talk as long as I can. My strategy is I will scream and yell at you until you do it for me. Okay, so I want you to differentiate what a need, a want, and a strategy. And this is one of the really big things that I got a Sofer's presentation. And his second step, to come with care and curiosity, that kind of changed my whole kind of approach with therapy, because my instinct is to jump into judgment. Okay, so the summary is that to craft your speech, first, lead with presence, come with care and curiosity, and to focus in on what matters. Okay, I leave it up to the rest of the group now.
So depending on who feels inspired at the moment with a comment or a question. Kirk, I'm going to pick on you. I just saw your screen pop open. I know you have studied quite a bit of Buddhist thought. Wonder if you had some thoughts.
Well, thanks, Renee. Myrtle was a really fine presentation, is very clear. And it is interesting because I had an experience myself just 2 days ago in a Zoom meeting where I was cut off twice. And the first time I was told that no one could understand what I was saying. And I thought I was being perfectly clear. And then the second time I only got a few words out of my mouth, and the moderator of the group just cut me off and said, wait, we're not sure we want to hear this right now, right? And I had previously had conversations with her about, letting her know that, if she ever needed to cut me off, don't worry about it. It's no problem. I understand she's just trying to, navigate the dynamics of the group and so on. So don't worry, I'm not going to take it personally. But boy, did I take it personally. And so, the advice that you started with, not to speak when you're angry, to me, that is like it's a difficult lesson to learn. Mm-hmm. But it's what came to mind is Gandhi's quote. He says, if you find yourself getting angry, sit down and count to 10, and if that doesn't work, count to 100. In my case, it probably would, like 1,000, and then maybe I would have calmed down. But so yeah, I think that just learning restraint. Learning not to, because the impulse is to react, right? Yes. Thoughtlessly, and just based on your emotion. So, I find this is an issue I've been struggling with my whole life, and I'm sure other people have too. So I would say that the good way perhaps to start the discussion is, what are some keys to catching yourself, because often you feel like the feeling is like you have to say something, right? You can't just let it go. You can't just let it pass by because this person is being belligerent, or they're not seeing something clearly, or they're off base and they need to understand that, or there's very often an excuse why you really need to say something, even when you're angry. So yeah, I would like to hear some comments about that. How to catch yourself and then convince yourself that really what you should do is just remain quiet for a while.
I heard someone say recently, you can always tell somebody to go to hell tomorrow. No need to say it today. Maybe give it a night to think about it. This was where the somatics work came in, a lot about having to do with knowing when your heart is beating and you're starting to sweat may not be a best time to respond.
There's an acronym called RAIN, R-A-I-N, and R stands for recognizing your feelings. A stands for accepting those feelings. I stands for investigating it, is where do you feel it in your body? And N stands for non-attachment, is letting go of it. And in between, you can do physiological things like deep breathing and so forth, right, David?
Could you review that again, the acronym, and then what goes along with it? Okay.
R stands for recognize your emotion at that moment. Am I angry? Am I scared? Am I sad? What am I? And I gave you a whole list of feelings. And a lot of the feelings that we don't like, we consider negative feelings. That indicates generally when our needs are not being met. So if you're feeling one of those things, you're somehow a need that you have is not being met. Okay. If you're happy, your need is probably met. Okay. So the first one is recognize your feelings. The second one is accept them. And I remember Thich Nhat Hanh saying, when a child is crying, do you spank a child? No, you take that child into your arms. You take yourself into your arms. You soothe yourself. You know, you take care of you. You have some self-empathy, okay? And I is investigated in your body. Some people's stomach just kind of twists and turn. Some people want to punch. Some people want to talk. You know, we have all these somatic ways we express our unhappiness. Some people, you know, we all have different strategies, and you can feel it in your body. And then non-attachment is that point of letting go. And Sofer has a whole strategy, David. Remember the center line strategy? He has a whole series of things you do to calm your body down specifically.
I'd like to sort of continue with Kirk's idea and your ideas about restraint. Kirk brought up the issue of restraint. And then, so really the question is, well, what do you do when you restrain? Or how can you become aware to restrain? And sometimes, of course, you can repress. And I do a lot of that. And so I wake up and my foot's bothering me. So I put all that anger and frustration into my foot. Then I have to talk to my foot for a while and exercise my foot, which is probably a useful thing to do, actually, because it's ignored so much. But sometimes repression isn't really good, but other times, especially with anger, it's better than being angry, maybe. Can you help clarify restraint and repression?
Okay, and we're not advocating repression, okay? We're saying, recognize that I'm angry. Be with your anger, stay with your anger. You know, so I'm angry, okay, where do I feel it in my body now? What am I thinking? What needs am I not, you know? You stay with the anger. If you have to go take a walk, or this is what I do, if I feel like I have a problem and I'm upset, I take a walk, right? It's the thinking, right? That change your emotions. It's how you process it.
I had some thoughts to to Maurice's question, particularly, I think you were talking about anger. And I think anger's pretty interesting as far as feeling or emotion, because often it's, I mean, you're talking about how thoughts create feelings, but anger is particularly one that the body can create, particularly in trauma and so forth, because it's associated with the fight or flight system, the sympathetic nervous system. And so oftentimes, without even any thoughts or anything, our bodies can be triggered into anger or anxiety or sometimes freeze states and so forth. But usually when it arises, like I think as far as like, I think your question, Maurice, was how do you know when you need not speak and so forth, or just let it sort of, how do you discharge it, or do you repress it? I think that was your question. I think a couple of things I think about as far as if it's coming from the body, if it's a sympathetic arousal type of thing, oftentimes the discharge that wants to happen is through your upper body, your hands, your arms, your neck, your jaw, sometimes push-ups. There's some sort of action that is called for. Anger particularly is an emotion that calls for action in the world. And that's why it often comes into the arms, into the hands. It wants to manipulate the world. It wants to defend ourselves. It wants to fight. It wants to change the world. And so you get this overwhelming energy to do something. And I think oftentimes just on a physical basis, doing something can help. Exercise can help. You'll get, if it's anxiety or fear or something, we'll often get that in the legs. It charges our bodies to run and to escape, right? That's sort of the somatic basis of that. So it depends on the type of emotion, but often it wants some sort of physical expression. Oddly, I find one of the most interesting things about the human species is our ability to express in language often discharges, particularly if we're accurate in our language, accurate and truthful. There's sort of relief that we feel by speaking truth, especially if it's received, which I think is the difference. You know, if you have something on your chest and you speak to somebody but they don't hear you, we might get more angry or more frustrated. But then we have those experiences where we're able to speak this truth and be received, and we walk away relieved or something like that. So I think it depends is always seems to be the answer to everything. It totally depends. I think oftentimes you can be so charged up that you can't think words clearly, so you don't have that sort of ability to express at that time very accurately. Or maybe we have a scream or a yell or something like that's appropriate, but in those cases, maybe some exercise helps. But the other thing I would say is that if it's coming from a cognitive basis, in other words, from top down, it's a feeling that's generated from our thoughts. It's, you know, I believe it's a pretty widely used Buddhist practice to sort of notice the sensations and dissociate the thoughts, right? And we notice that it dissipates in the body. We in other words, we stop feeding it. So emotions that are created from these thoughts or beliefs oftentimes dissipate if we stop feeding it the thoughts. So that's another sort of technique that people use. One way to do that is either to watch the sensations or literally focus on something else. You know, just I guess you call that distracting yourself until the sort of body relaxes.
Like take a walk.
Yeah. Or the other thing, you know, I have found, and when I started learning NVC or nonviolent communication, When I was learning that, one of the things that got me super interested in it is I was learning cognitive behavioral therapy at the same time. And I realized that one of the things that made speaking in this manner difficult was it necessitated that you think differently, which is really hard. So I realized if you learn to speak differently, you in essence reprogram the way you think. And so it's sort of reverse engineering therapy or psychotherapy or something like that. So I would sit there and I would have all these feelings and I would journal them, but I would put them in MVC. I'd take these little feeling lists and the need list and have like a little ad lib sentence. And I would try to put it in MVC. And I think also that is a form of truthful expression, even though it's not to the person, but it oftentimes clarifies the mind and gives you some sense of relief, that relief that you get when you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
When you got the right words to the feeling or you understand it and it's like, aha, and and that too is a form of expression, expressing that energy, that emotional energy. When I say expression, I just mean expressing the feeling, either could be laughing, crying, hitting, screaming, speaking, curling up in a ball, whatever it is. So
I'm going to cut you off now.
yeah, please do. Please do. Somebody cut me off.
Thank you.
Anne, I wanted to call on you. I just think you have a lot of insight into this whole topic.
Thank you. Well, no, I don't, I'm not credible to speak on this subject, but I enjoyed very much the discussion. And I'm nodding because I wish I had heard this discussion when I was in my 40s or 30s. Because I may have, I learned it over my years of age, how to control myself and how to try to understand others, like my husband, and exactly, my husband has a family of 8 siblings. 4 years ago, we had the same experience of splitting the whatever my mother-in-law had left to us, and to this day I haven't spoken to my sister-in-law for 5 years.
Wow.
So, or my brother-in-laws and my husband as well. So I kind of wish, I don't know, maybe it would have been different if I had heard this discussion a little earlier, but I'm getting a lot of reflections in my mind as I listen to everyone speak. And but I'm very grateful for hula and Nia and Tai Chi that has helped me release my tension and anger, frustration. So I'm so happy that I found Still and Moving Center. Thank you.
Very beautiful. Thank you so much. It sounds as if the somatic practice of actually paying attention to what's going on in your body during a movement session has drifted over into the rest of your life. So that if you are starting to feel those knots in your stomach, you're starting to feel your fists clenching, or maybe getting sweaty palms, or maybe your neck's starting to really get tight. Yeah, you're noticing it because you already have a movement practice where you're noticing. And then that in turn is telling you, oh, I'm probably feeling this way. Scared or nervous or angry or really, sad that this is happening. You might notice your shoulders are just like dropping and drooping and realizing how depressed you feel, maybe listening to some of these things. And then as you make the realization of what's going on in your body, being the clue to what's going on in yourself emotionally, seems to me that you're then empowered to look at what are those thoughts that are causing those emotions to happen in me.
That's what I wanted to say. Thank you, Renee, for saying it so well. Thank you.
Because then when we realize the thoughts, we can begin to address them. It seems to me, in my life experience, once we're getting the emotions crashing upon us, pretty much it's like being in, a heavy wave situation. It's like, how do I survive? Can I duck dive, or am I just going to get washing machine tumbled in it all, right? How am I going to get through with the emotion at the moment? However, if we can be a little bit more advanced before, we have a full-on tumultuous storm of emotions, and we redirect the thoughts, all of a sudden we're calling in different feelings, like feelings of greater calm, more compassion for the other person. Oh, I wonder what they're actually thinking that would cause them to say that thing to me. What's going on with them? That's the curiosity, I think, and care that Myrtle has been bringing up. And when our minds start activating like that, all of a sudden those emotions that we had been cultivating by, gosh, they always say those dang things to me, and they're just stupid. Those thoughts cultivating, the tumultuous emotions, and the curiosity caring thoughts bring a whole different set of feelings that are deeper and that are more based in what I feel like is my true self, kind of just being part of the storm. Deborah.
Hi, I really enjoyed this discussion, Myrtle. Thank you. And just from a little tip I have is beating a pillow can really, really help. And sometimes if you're beating a pillow, either with your fists or even a tennis racket or something, stuff comes out that you didn't even know. The emotions are passing through you, and it can get a lot of stuff you didn't even know was there, and might not even be mad at the person you thought you were mad at, or the reason isn't even. Anyway, beating a pillow, I highly recommend.
Renee, the points you made there reminded me of what's spoken of in which you see. It's a symbol that you see on the outside of every Tibetan meeting hall or temple. And that in Southern Buddhism, it occurs as well. In fact, I think the earliest one is in the Buddhist caves and Ajanta caves, but it's called the Bhava Chakra, and it's the wheel of samsara, and on the outer rim of the wheel is what they call the 12 nidanas, and it's the process of what brings us into birth and death, the cycle of birth and death. And that there's a lot of detailed doctrinal explanation of every single detail in this illustration, but I'm just going to skim over the top of it because to get to the point. So it shows, not only does it show that the outer rim of the wheel, this kind of 12-fold explanation of the process by which beings are repeatedly brought into reincarnation. But then inside of that, it gives the 6 realms in which incarnation can occur. And then inside of that, in the hub of the wheel, there's 3 animals. And these 3 animals it's keeping the whole thing in motion. And what is it? It's anger, desire, and ignorance. That's what the symbolism of the 3 animals are, right? So, and the idea is that, as long as we're captive to those, the 3 poisons, as long as we're captive to those poisons, we're going to be in the cycle of unconscious rebirth and suffering. Of course, it all entails suffering because it's unconscious. But there's also in this, frequently what you'll see, especially in Northern Buddhism in this illustration, is in each of the realms, there's a Buddha standing there, or a bodhisattva. It would be in the Northern Buddhism, it'd be a bodhisattva. And outside the realm, outside the entire circle, there's the Buddha standing and pointing to the moon, which is the moon of enlightenment. But again, just, getting it down to a simple point, the idea is that the Buddha or the Bodhisattva continues to participate in this wheel of samsara, knowing that beings are trapped by anger, desire, and ignorance, but in a way that's helping to benefit them, helping to eventually release them from those poisons. And so I connected up with Renee's, what Renee was saying, because it seems like one of the keys, and I think this is so crucial, that because there's so much abuse of speech in our culture. You just take a walk in the street or downtown and you hear it all the time, right? Misuse of words, angry words, violent words, unnecessary speech, words meant to manipulate. So it's like pervasive problem in our culture. So this whole idea of trying to reform speech and the use of words and the tone in which one responds, and have it arise out of concern and care for the other person who is suffering. They have responded to you in an ignorant way, perhaps, because they are captive in some way to those poisons. And so if you just respond in a similar fashion, you're just perpetuating that wheel. So, how the question then becomes, how do you respond in a way that's healing, that's actually nurturing something deeper? It's pointing to a deeper reality, a deeper truth about your unity with that other person, your empathy for them, and so on.
Sharon, you usually wait to the end to drop some beautiful jewel upon us. I bet you have one for us today.
Like going back to her brother, I think it's probably just recognizing how he was feeling. And it's like anybody, like you recognize your own feelings, and recognizing that, and just repeating whatever he was feeling and not making a judgment of it, or putting yourself to, attaching to what he said to you. And then once you do what most people, when they're angry and you recognize it, they sort of calm down. Then you look at yourself, because, you shouldn't you're not attaching to it, and you let go of it. You make no judgment about it or attach it to yourself, I think. And I think a lot of times when we have interaction, no matter what it is, like with Kurt's situation or what, we take it personal and we attach our feelings to whatever is happening at that moment. And other people that get angry just want it to be recognized. So you would just repeat what they say without judging it, and say, "Oh, I think you're angry because you feel like you hadn't had enough time to, speak." And most people will let go of the anger. I don't know. Myrtle, your talk is good. I didn't know you were in psychology.
Thank you so much, Sharon. I wanted to see if I could do this, which was to give Myrtle another chance to I'm sure you've gained something from this, or you have some final thought that you wanted to share that maybe you didn't get a chance to yet. And then I also wanted to ask Donna Moore whether she would be willing to give us a little vote of thanks for today's presentation by Myrtle and the conversation. Okay, thank you so much, Myrtle.
Okay, thank you for having me here, and listening to everyone. It sounds like a big challenge for people is to calm their own emotions. That's the very step to come with presence, to be in the present moment. That is like the only moment, right? The Buddhist belief, it is the only moment. So I wish all of you the ability to come with presence to whatever you come to in life. Just be present in that moment. And I hope you are able to practice some of this. And you know, we took hours learning this, and the way to really apply it is like one-to-one. If any of you ever want to have a private conversation with me to practice this, David and I, we do meet to practice this. And if you have like a situation that you want to talk about, David and I'd be willing to listen to you and work it out. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciated it. Thank you.
Thank you, Myrtle. Yes, it's been a wonderful presentation, and we can tell from the follow-up conversation how valuable it was. Donna?
Your presentation was, as someone else mentioned, very, very clear and very appreciated. The key to a good presentation for me is either you leave people at the end and they can't speak, or you stimulate a great deal of curiosity, conversation, imagination, getting people to think. And I think that happened tonight. So for that, I'm very grateful.
Yes, me too. Before we all go our ways for this week of crafting our speech, I want to invite you all to next week's conversation, which will be on the topic of dancing to life's music. And that it actually is in regard to the celebration of the Indian festival of Mahashivaratri. So Shiva representing under the name Shiva Nataraj, Lord of the Dance. So an approach towards life as a dance. And we are actually going to have a professional dancer speaking from his experience from the dance tradition on this topic of dancing to life's music. And if we all could just give a little round of thank you, applause to Myrtle. It was just a really wonderful conversation, and one we can certainly do a lot to enhance our own lives with.